Another day, another video talking preseason win totals. Thanks to the good folks over at FanDuel, we know what the preseason odds are for every major team going into 2024. We've already broken down the ACC, already broken down the Big Ten, already broken down the SEC. Let's talk about the granddaddy of them all and probably the most fun conference in college football. That, of course, is the Big 12. But if you are new here, welcome on into the channel, people. I'm Cole Thompson. Make sure you hit the subscribe button down below, the ring notification. That way you keep up with everything we're doing over here on this channel. We talk college football daily, looking back at 2023, a look ahead at 2024, recaps, betting lines, everything possible. So if this is your daily dose of college football content, make sure you smash that subscribe button. Leave a comment telling me, who do you think has the best line going into 2024? Tell your friends, your family, your mortal enemies, best of bros, college football aficionados, and Big 12 faithful everywhere about this channel, because we're on the race to become the #1 YouTube show talking about our favorite sport. And we're going to get there, so jump on in while the water's fine. Continue to follow me on social media, Twitter, X, Instagram, slide in the DMs, ask me a question. I love breaking down content on this channel from you, the viewers, and that way conversations surrounding college football never have to stop flowing. This is the most fun conference in college football. Every single year, I stand on that ground. You want to have as much positivity as possible. You want to feel like you have a shot of going to Arlington. You sign up and play for the Big 12. 16 teams next season. No more Oklahoma or Texas. They're headed on over to the SEC. Greener pastures, greener money, whatever you want to say. But to me, this now creates more opportunities for fun in the conference. Plus, with the newcomers added on in, I really, really like what the Big 12 is going to be. And there's only a handful of teams that are ranked inside of the 9.5 win total or higher. So let's go ahead and break them down. For starters, it's Utah. 9.5 wins going into next year. Death, taxes, Kyle Whittingham doing more with less. That's just MO of college football as we know it. This was a team that last year went 8-5. This was a team that underachieved expectations in terms of what you expect from Utah, especially in the Big 12. Played close in a lot of games, but also had a few losses on the schedule, Washington being one, Oregon State being another. They could be a top 10 team next year. No one should be shocked. They should be the favorites to win the Big 12 next year. Nobody should be shocked. Why is that, Cole? Well, you realize that you get back not only your starting quarterback, who's going on his 50th season of college football in Cam Rising, you also bring back Brayton Kuthi, your tight end, your security blanket, guy who's going to be able to attack the middle of the field and find ways into the end zone like no one's business. Defensively, they're always sound. Utah is always just fundamentally sound at that position. They always seem to land 2 or 3 players that end up panning out and turning into household names at the NFL level. It's going to happen again. You know it is. You look at their schedule, they really only have a 3-game stretch where you're a little nervous, in my opinion. Oklahoma State on the road, September 21st, Arizona at home on September 28th. You get a bye, and then you come back and you play Arizona State. Close out the year with BYU, Colorado, UCF, and Iowa State. You should be favorites in all those matchups. 10 wins, very plausible. If you can get past Oklahoma State and Arizona in back-to-back weeks, I think you're going to be able to mitigate the waters to where you're going to find your way to Arlington. One bet that I am immediately making. I love Utah. I love Kyle Whittingham. I love this roster, especially with what they're bringing back in veteranship. Hard pressed for me to say that this is not going to be a team that's a focal point of the Big 12. Next up, Kansas State, 9.5 wins. New quarterback, new offensive coordinator, but maybe an upgrade at least at one of those spots. I liked Will Howard. I think Manhattan liked Will Howard. I think they saw what Avery Johnson could do and started salivating at the mouth, realizing this gives us the best chance to be a front runner for years on end. 5-star talent in Manhattan. Name the last time you heard that at quarterback. It's almost unheard of. In fact, it is unheard of. But that's what Chris Klieman does. He gets more with less, and more importantly, he also gets the best version of the team to take the field every single week. You upgrade at wide receiver, in my opinion. Dante Cephas never was able to show off exactly who he was at Penn State. Maybe he will in the Big 12. Maybe he'll end up being the go-to target for Avery Johnson. And this is a guy that's going to be able to score maybe 40-plus touchdowns this year. Would it shock you to see him go 28 passing touchdowns, a dozen rushing touchdowns, all inside the red zone? Wouldn't shock me. Maybe he's going to end up being the best quarterback in the Big 12. Schedule-wise, pans out pretty well. Open up the season with 2 rigorous matchups, back-to-back weeks, on the road at Tulane. Then you open conference play against Arizona. BYU is a little bit tricky at times. Same with Oklahoma State. But you close out the year with Arizona State, Houston, Cincinnati, Iowa State. If you can get past Arizona, Tulane, and not fall short against a Colorado or a BYU. 10-2 feels very likely. There's a reason why many people believe it is Utah and Kansas State. Insert third team here because of they're built that way. Top 20 defense returning next year, over 55% of the production returning next year. And Chris Kleiman is a hell of a coach. You're going to get the best results week in and week out. I do think you look at this Kansas State team. Don't be shocked to see them in the college football playoff year one with a dozen rosters. Colorado, 5.5 wins. I'm interested with this line. We don't know what Colorado's going to be. I think it's very foolish to say, you know what Colorado's going to be. In terms of star power, they got it. Absolutely, they have it, especially with Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, arguably one of the best 1-2 combinations in the sport. Deion Sanders, he's bringing Louis. He's brought over some good transfers. I love the addition of Will Shepherd. That is a plug-and-play outside wide receiver that is going to take pressure off of Travis Hunter. He's going to come in and immediately be a factor in the passing game in place of Xavier Weaver. I also like that they attack the offensive line. Yes, they brought in a lot of transfers. Yes, they brought in a lot of names that were either somewhat starters or aging starters, but they also got 5-star Jordan Seaton. That's like landing 3 offensive linemen for the transfer portal. That's a guy that you can build. You can have him mold into what you see fit. And if you can do that, you see the progress with the offensive line. It's a schedule that's manageable. North Dakota State, Nebraska, Colorado State to start off the year. I would say 2 of those you should win. Baylor, UCF, both winnable games. Kansas State, Arizona. That is a very tricky part of the schedule because you're coming off of a bye, but you won't have your next bye until later on down the stretch in the season, near the end of the year. You look at the 4 games to close out the season: Texas Tech, Utah, Kansas, and Oklahoma State. All very much winnable games, all very much where you can get blown out depending on what the roster looks like. I'm interested to see what this roster can be. I like Colorado. I think that they're bowl eligible this year. Do I think that they're going to get to a college football playoff nod? No, not the slightest. But maybe you'll be content after having lackluster season. 7-5, 8-4. I would say that that's probably a more monumental win than we're going to give credit for. UCF, 8.5 wins. Guys, this is now Gus Malzahn getting a quarterback that fits exactly what helped him win a national title at 2010. This is a quarterback that is somewhat of an upgrade over Nick Marshall when he went to a national title as Auburn's head coach in 2013. They got KJ Jefferson. Imagine KJ Jefferson playing in the offense that made Cam Newton a Heisman Trophy winner. Stop before you go any further. No, it is not Cam Newton 2.0. But this is an offensive line that I think is going to be more improved. This is an offense that was able to add in a few pieces via the transfer portal and on the recruiting trail at wide receiver, at running back. Defensively, they return over 60% of their production. They were a team that I thought slightly underachieved for what we expected for the Gus Malzahn special, but they also got a monumental win over Oklahoma State. So they are able to hold their own against compelling opponents. You look at their schedule as a whole, it's not as if it's that daunting, but there are some games that you think could be traps. New Hampshire, Sam Houston State, TCU to begin the year, Colorado in week 4, Florida in week 5 on the road in Gainesville. Very much a critical game. The 3-game stretch that I'm most interested in: October 19th on the road at Iowa State, BYU at home, and then they play against Arizona on November 11th in the bounce house. Can you win those games? Can you get over the hump in those matchups? Because if so, I would not be shocked to start looking at UCF as a legit contender. They're built to at least be a perennial name. And maybe they won't make it to Arlington, but they're damn sure going to knock somebody out of going to AT&T Stadium. Kansas, 8.5 wins. Look, they got to 9-4 last year. It's going to be interesting to see what this offense looks like without Andy Kolanicki. He took the job at Penn State this offseason. Maybe that's going to factor into how Jalen Daniels plays, but you got to 9 wins with Jason Bean as your quarterback. Jalen Daniels has absolutely a shot of making it to the Heisman Trophy presentation. He has a shot at being the best quarterback in college football this year. The fluidity of his legs, the mobility, the arm strength, the accuracy, it's all there. And he had a full year to absolutely heal from what he suffered in fall camp. He's now going to be locked in to hopefully have a breakout season. Devin Neal returns. You added in a few players via the portal. You did lose some names via the coaching staff, which does worry me a little bit, but Lance Leipold was able to turn the laughingstock of Buffalo into a MAC contender and an eventual MAC champion. You don't think he can do the same thing with Kansas? This has been the best version of Kansas we've seen since Mark Mangio in 2007. And they're rolling. And they have a bunch of their players returning, including over 65% of their offensive starters. Defensively, they're taking a step back, But I do think that Kansas, with the way their schedule pans out, you just got to get over two small humps. Very start of the year, very end of the season. You got to be able to get your own against the Sunflower State rival in Kansas State. You get that, pretty good spot. Arizona, 8.5 wins. New head coach, but not new quarterback. Noah Fafita back in action. I am betting big that Fafita ends up actually making it to New York City for the Heisman Trophy presentation. I love the fact that he and T-Mac are still staying here. They kept a ton of their defensive players that didn't leave for the NFL draft. It's the same roster, just with the new coach. And Brett Brennan was phenomenal at San Jose State. We often look at the record and say that determines a coach. No, lies, just lies, plain and simple. Brett Brennan was able to turn this team at the Spartans into a 7-win roster every single year. Do you know how challenging it is to do that in the Mountain West when you have other teams with better resources, better NIL funds, better recruiting prowesses? That's more with less. That's consistency. Schedule-wise, it is a little bit of a scare. You start off the year back-to-back games against Kansas State and Utah on the road, I might add in, to begin conference play. After that, you get BYU, Colorado, West Virginia, UCF, but you close out the year with Houston, TCU, Arizona. This might end up being the sleeper team in the Big 12. This may end up being a team that goes 8-4, but I do think that as long as you have T-Mac and as long as you have Noah Fafita leading your offense, you're in a really, really good spot. Do not be shocked to see Arizona exceed expectations. They get to 10-2. They're punching their ticket to Arlington. Last but not least, Iowa State, 7.5. Iowa State, man. You've been waiting to see when will the Brock Purdy 2.0 roster retain itself. When is Matt Campbell going to get that veteranship of young players that need a couple of years of inexperience to get back to where they were? They had it last year. Rocco Betch, I think, is a really good quarterback. He won Offensive Freshman of the Year. He threw for over 3,000 yards, 23 touchdowns. He has both of his number one receivers in Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel back in the saddle. Their schedule, again, it's not daunting. It's not easy, but it still is manageable. Of course, you have the Side Bowl in week 2 against Iowa, Arkansas State, North Dakota to begin the year. Houston, you get them in week 4. Baylor, West Virginia. You could start off seeing a 6-0 run before you have to face off against UCF, Texas Tech, Kansas, Utah, Kansas State to close out the year. I think 7-5 is very much plausible. I think 8-4 is very much plausible. They may be the team that is the spoiler in the Big 12 this year. Do not be shocked to watch Iowa State get a few wins. They probably shouldn't, and maybe end up fighting at least going into the final week of the regular season for a spot in Arlington. But those are my favorite lines going into 2024. What's your favorite line in the Big 12? Who do you think is going to massively hit the over? And which team do you think I'm way too high on? Comment down below. Leave it, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Go ahead and follow me on social media, Twitter, X, Instagram, at Mr. Cole Thompson. That way we can continue our conversation surrounding college football. Make sure you hit the ring notification. That way you keep up with everything we're doing on this channel. And until next time, folks, later.